So I've just finished up first Berserker Khazan, and man, it's a really good game. Combat wise, it's possibly my favorite Souls-like. Now when playing the demo a couple months ago, I was impressed but slightly worried that the game would be too easy, and man, I was freaking wrong. The bosses in this game manhandled the hell out of me. It was to the point where after a major fight, I was mentally exhausted. So yeah, the bosses are no joke, which made me want to make this video even more. Basically, I'm gonna rank each of the main game bosses from easiest to hardest. I'm going to be placing them in 4 tiers: easy, moderate, hard, and super hard. And without wasting any more of your time, let's start at the bottom of easy tier. Yatuga is the easiest main story boss in the game, which makes sense since he's the first boss encounter. This Yeti looking mofo is actually a pretty decent fight. Sure, his attacks are easily telegraphed and all, but the fight is fun regardless. Now I like to think of Yatuga as a tutorial boss of sorts because he basically forces the player to learn how to deflect properly. Sure, you can also brink dodge, but deflection timing is the key to having a good time in this game. Now his moveset isn't all that crazy. He just has a couple of slams, freeze breath, that's mostly it. The only thing that killed me during this fight was the grab. He does it so fast that it'll catch most people off guard. But overall, apart from that, he's a super easy encounter. Blade Phantom, one of my personal favorite early game bosses. Blade Phantom wasn't hard, but definitely gave me some slight trouble when playing the demo a couple months ago. And I wouldn't even call it trouble, it's just that I wasn't locked in. But the minute I did, I realized how easy he actually was, especially when it comes down to reacting to his moves. Now despite how easy he is, he has a lot in his arsenal, especially in his second phase. Quote unquote hardest attacks to deal with is his sword strikes in the second phase, but again, you should be done with him in no time. Volbano, another beast type enemy. You know, after struggling a lot with Viper, I thought this guy was going to be super hard, but it turns out he was quite easy. But I'm not gonna lie to you, this fight took me way longer than it should have. You see, Volbano does this thing which he kinda does randomly during phase 2, where he hammers the steel into the ground, causing the entire arena to catch on fire. This move got me killed so many times, and I was a bit furious because I genuinely didn't know what to do. And it's not like I found him hard or anything, it was literally just that move that gave me issues. I don't know how, but after a while I was able to defeat him without him ever using that attack again. So when I fought the other version of him in a submission, I kept dying to that move. But it turns out that all I needed to do was climb the fucking ladder that's in the arena. I swear that's possibly one of my slowest moments in a video game. But to be fair though, who would have thought that climbing a ladder in the middle of a boss fight is an option? However, after that, his fight became super easy. But yeah, that was the most standout thing about Volbano's encounter. Every other attack he has is so easy to counter, plus he only has 1 health bar, which makes the fight goes by super fast. Now let's move on to the bosses that I would consider moderate. These bosses require some level of strategy, but aren't overwhelming by any means. They're definitely faster, more aggressive, and they got some weird unique mechanics, but they're still manageable for the most part. And you will likely need a few tries to learn their attack patterns, but they don't feel too punishing if you get what I mean. Now at the bottom of moderate tier we have Aratra. After going through the caves and poison swamps filled with annoying ass spiders, we then get to fight, well, another freaking spider, as the final boss of this region. The moment I saw this boss, I knew I would be annoyed. And I don't even have a fear of spiders or anything, but spider bosses usually suck ass, especially in Souls-like games. And to be honest, Aratra kinda sucked here as well. What makes Aratra somewhat difficult is how hard it is to time your deflects against your attacks. I swear sometimes I will be pressing the button and I will still take damage, even though I'm pretty sure I at least blocked the attack. Now luckily you can break off the 2 front legs, which will stun her for a while, but eventually she will climb up one of the holes and spawn some exploding spiders and then regenerate her limbs, starting the fight back to square one. So it's basically just doing this until the fight ends, and that's it. Now surprisingly I didn't struggle with her, because again, not a hard fight but a somewhat annoying one due to the poison and the weird attack timings. Next up we have another beast-like boss. So in terms of difficulty, there's not much that needs to be said about Shakuta, or Shakuta. His attacks can be countered pretty easily after 1 or 2 attempts, and there's not really a specific attack that you need to watch out for or anything. But what did make him moderately difficult to me was the sheer amount of health he has and the amount of damage he dealt. I swear, if you're not careful, this thing can kill you in 3 attacks. But apart from that, he's not all that difficult, so that's why I placed him here. Princess Ilina. Now, presentation wise, I really like the princess's intro cutscene. It's super cool as it makes it look like a theater, and the attack where she summons a choir in the audience to hit you with some orbs was also pretty dope and gave me flashbacks to Nier. Now, funny thing about this encounter is that I actually beat her first try, which is something I can't say for many of the bosses on this list. But when refighting her again, she was low-key kicking my ass, as it took around 4 attempts to beat her again. So yeah, I know, skill issue. But her fight was more annoying than hard since most of her attacks in the second phase uses chaos, which is an element that can do a decent amount of damage, but also cap your health to a certain point if the bar fills up. But the two attacks that always give me trouble are the thrusting ones, as I can't seem to get the timing right, and the one where she charges up dashes through you 2 times. The second one is probably the most deadly as it can kill you in 1 or 2 hits, but apart from that she's not hard by any means, and the fact that she only has 1 health bar is a good thing. Next up in the moderately difficult tier we have Reese. Reese is the friend of Khazan and wife of Ozma, the big bad villain, so fighting her was set up to be this emotional moment. The fight itself isn't too hard, especially her first phase. In this phase she casts a lot of spells, especially ones that deals chaos damage, but at least it wasn't unbearable compared to some of the other fights, because she's actually really fun. In terms of major attacks that gave me a hard time in phase 1, there weren't really any. I think the only one that caught me off guard a few times was her wing combo, but this phase can be dealt with pretty easily, especially if you have a decent amount of stamina to keep applying pressure to her. Now the second phase is where she turns up a lot. She now has a scythe and she primarily focuses on chaos magic. Her attacks in this phase definitely takes a bit more time to get used to, plus she also has way more health, plus another health bar. The trickiest move to deal with in this phase is the teleporting attack sequence. But while her second phase is definitely a bit more challenging, I didn't find her to be that hard at all, just a bit tricky to deal with. Rankus is one annoying ass mofo. This dude pisses me off so much, not because he's extremely difficult or anything, but it's the fact that it's so hard to get his stamina down to 0. I swear, the bosses that regenerates their stamina quickly were such a pain to deal with. Now Rankus also has one of the weirdest moveset in the game. He has a lot of delayed attacks and some of his other ones can be a bit tricky to time. Some other things that adds to his difficulty is his enormous health pool, his tendency to always zipline himself across the arena, which makes it a game of catch up, and oh yeah, did I mention that he has a big ass flamethrower as well? Now his moveset, while taking some time to get used to, isn't all too bad, but again it's his enormous health and stamina regeneration that makes this fight drags on a bit, and that is something I wanted to talk about. As much as I enjoyed most of the bosses, well at least the main game ones, their tankiness and health is the main reason why they're challenging. Sure, they have difficult movesets, but man, the sheer amount of health they have can sometimes feel like a drag. And I'm only talking about a few bosses, because not all of them have this issue. But all that yapping aside, Rankus, while being a challenge for sure, isn't too hard if you're able to constantly break his stamina. My trick is to use a heavy hitting special skill when the stamina bar is close to 0, because the second you give him a break, he's gonna instantly regain all of it, so just make sure to always apply pressure. Next up we have Hismar. Hismar is a spectacle fight, meaning that most of the focus was placed on his visuals rather than making his moveset super challenging. Now don't get me wrong, this thing is still tough as bricks, but compared to most other bosses here, his moveset is actually easier to get used to. The only thing that always catches me off guard is the slam that causes a delayed ground explosion. For some reason, I could not get the timing right. When I don't attack, he seems to delay it forever, but as soon as I start attacking him in this state, he immediately triggers the explosion. In his second phase, he starts incorporating chaos based attacks. These aren't super hard to dodge, but they will definitely catch you off guard if you're not careful. But that's about it for this guy. Again, he's tough, but compared to some of the other bosses that's to come, he's definitely on the easier side. Now let's move on to the hard bosses. These guys require you to understand their moveset fully with little to no mistake. They're usually super aggressive and have faster, more trickier attacks than most other bosses. Now the first hard boss we have here is Viper. Okay, so the placement of Viper might seem a bit odd because looking back, sure he was hard, but after all the knowledge we've gained, if we went back to fight him, he would be super easy. But I'm ranking these guys based on first impressions and how it would feel to fight them as a new player, and that said, Viper is fucking insane as a third boss. Look, I know they nerfed him a little bit, but apparently he's still a challenging fight. What makes him difficult, especially in his first phase, is the amount of attacks and combos he has in his arsenal, and he dishes these out pretty quickly, which takes a while to get the timing correctly. He also has a decent amount of health for each phase. Yes, each phase. If you thought the first phase was tough, well get ready because in the second, he regains all of his health and now the arena is darker, making it harder to see him clearly. During this phase he will do a sequence of jump attacks followed up by a claw attack, and an overhead impaling one. This is the hardest attack to get used to in this phase. So yeah, overall, due to him having a lot of health and insanely quick combos, I decided to place him here. This lady was one of the bosses I wanted to fight the most because she looked really cool in the trailers. Now when I fought her at first, she seemed like she would be annoying because all she does is just spam projectiles. But then it clicked immediately that this fight is based on how fast you can close in on her and do as much damage as possible before she distances herself again. And I remembered the skill that I had where if an enemy shoot a projectile and you perfect dodge through it, by pressing the attack button you can immediately close the distance on them. The skill came in clutch for this fight because all this, pardon my language, bitch does is just spam spam spam. So if you're using the spear you should be good. I used the dual wielding build on her and it worked fine for the most part, but man, the greatsword seemed to be a bad matchup for her. Sure, it does a decent amount of stamina damage, but it's so slow and she always keeps moving away, which makes it hard to pull off a combo against her with it. But that aside, she's super weak to fire. This thing will tear through her health bar if you keep applying consecutive attacks. Now in terms of powerful attacks, the only attack I found really tricky to deal with is when she flies into the air and shoots the crystals at you. No matter what I do, I can't seem to get the deflect timing right. Sometimes it works, but other times it doesn't. Running seems to be the best option, but you have to be careful as you can easily get stun locked if a crystal hits you. But other than those attacks, all of her other ones are easily telegraphed, and overall, she's a really fun boss and up there as one of my favorites in the game. Elamine was a tough fight, and even though I would consider her hard, I don't think she was unbearable. Her main gimmick in this encounter is her shield. The more you hit it, the more it charges up, which she will then use to generate lightning attacks. The trickiest part of the fight is having to deal with her hiding behind the shield. Her stamina regen and her various lightning attacks are also issues. Now despite her being a lightning based boss, her attacks aren't super fast, and they usually have some wind up to them, giving you a chance to react. The reason why I brought this up is because you can use the parry skill on most of them. The skill is good for bosses with slower or more predictable attack patterns, as pulling this off correctly will result in them being temporarily stunned while also doing massive stamina damage. On my last attempt I was able to pull off many parries on her. All in all, Elamine is still a tough boss in my opinion, as it did take a lot of attempts for me to beat her. Malika or Melusa, look, I don't know his name, bro, please don't kill me in the comments. He's one of my favorite bosses in the first part of the game. I mean, he's everything I like in a boss fight. The fight starts off with the first phase with him using dual swords. This phase can be a bit tricky, but you'll get used to the timing of the attacks really quick. But in the second, he says F that, you're gonna be here for a while. And man, this fight took me an hour and 14 minutes. Like, holy shit. His second phase is insane. I mean, bro literally turns into Virgil. So, the phase starts off with him jumping into the air to do a ground slam, which is pretty easy to dodge or deflect. He then follows up with a timed AoE, and then the game does something unusual. The game slows down like it's in bullet time, then boom, this dude zaps through and pulls out this anime weep slash. That was my indication that I was going to be here for a long time. On each attempt I got better at dealing with the first phase, but his second was the main thing messing me up. Fortunately, he doesn't hold on to the katana for too long, and as soon as he pulls out his spirit swords, I knew I could win, since his attacks with these swords are pretty similar to phase 1. However, what made me go insane is the fact that he can also fucking heal himself. Look, I don't care, that's bullshit. But as I did many more attempts, I started to get the pattern of his second phase to the point where I was countering everything relatively well. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing, and that's his insane stamina pool. This man, just like Rankus, can regenerate stamina at a rapid pace. All in all, Melusa, or again Malika, definitely deserves to be in the hard tier, but he's also one of my favorite bosses in the game. However, I still kinda get why the devs nerfed him. Next up is Guido. Look, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this guy's name correctly, and to be honest, I don't really care that much. Also, I know I said I was only gonna focus on the main bosses, but this dude deserves a mention when it comes on to difficulty, cause he is hard. So basically this guy has Melusa's moveset, except he's in inverse, meaning that his first phase is Melusa's second and his second is Melusa's first. Now this might be a somewhat hot take, I don't know, I haven't heard too much people talk about him since he's an optional fucking boss, but despite me loving Melusa as a boss fight, I didn't enjoy this encounter that much. I just thought that he was a bit too tanky for my liking. He's not a bad boss by any means, I just felt like the fight drags on for way too long. At third place we have Scalpel. Man, he's tough. From the second I saw him pull out a coffin, I got flashbacks to Blasphemous 2. So funny thing about Scalpel is that I was struggling with him for a little over an hour, and then during the second phase he killed me, and I'm pretty sure he had more than half health remaining. But when he killed me on that encounter, something strange happened. I received the gear you would usually get after defeating him. So it turns out the game glitched and killed him for me. I was so confused and also just kinda mad because I wanted to actually fight him for myself. So I was low-key pissed and continued playing until I finished the next level after him. I then took an hour break and hopped on YouTube, only to find that you can literally refight the bosses. And I was so happy, so I fought him again and it only took me around 3 to 4 more tries. It's crazy how the game saw that I sucked ass and decided to hand me the free win. But look, we don't do free shit around here. Now let's talk about the actual fight itself. Man, this dude is absolutely insane. Like, I'm not even sure how I would manage without the spear. I did use the dual blades against him, and to be honest, they weren't demolishing him. But for those who fought with the greatsword only, hey man, shout out to you. You're a real one. In the first phase, you have to watch out for some of his swings. Sure, they're somewhat easily telegraphed, however, the fact that there's so much going on screen plus his weird unorthodox swordsmanship can cause some of his attacks to catch you off guard pretty easily. Now, the two most dangerous moves in phase 1 is the coffin grab and the coffin stab. The coffin grab, while not hard to dodge, definitely caught me off guard a few times, plus the grab box on it can be a bit, wonky. Now, the coffin stab is a really cool move, but something I learned is that you don't even have to parry the attacks. You can just keep attacking the coffin and this will cancel the move eventually. Now, when I took his first phase out and I saw the mission accomplished screen, I immediately knew the game was going to pull a Guardian Ape. I don't know, it's like I have spider sense but for bullshit. Now, if you thought this man was on crack in phase 1, well, phase 2 makes it seem like he's on crack, meth, and compound V. This is when I knew that damn, maybe some bosses don't deserve a second health bar. One of his most dangerous moves in this phase is when he does this long ass combo at the start. I just found it best to run away when he's about to do it, but for the most part his moveset remains the same with just a few different attacks incorporated. The worst one is the jump attack where he slams down his coffin, follows it up with hands bursting from it. The hitbox of this attack is a bit shit, not gonna lie, so you're gonna have to time your dodge correctly. Now, despite how hard he is and the fact that he has a whole nother health bar in the second phase, the devs actually had some mercy because his health constantly decreases in this phase, like rapidly too, to the point where you can probably just run away for the whole fight and he will eventually die. I guess that's your way of balancing him out. But overall, he's super tough and to be honest, he's actually one of my personal favorite fights in the game. Now let's move on to the super hard tier. I mean, there's no need for an explanation. These bosses are just insanely difficult. And at second place we have the magical elf girl Belarian. Alright, so out of all the hard bosses, she was definitely one of the most overtuned. And I don't like using that term for the bosses in this game because, to be honest, most of them aren't really overtuned. Because most of their attacks can be countered in many ways and it is relatively easy to keep up with them. It's just that they're tanky as hell. But Belarian is just a different breed. Just like many of the other bosses, moveset wise she can be a bit overwhelming at first, but after like 4 to 5 tries you'll start to memorize and counter each attack effectively. And when it comes on to the magical elf girl here, this is the case. But man, I swear, I just feel like this fight drags on for way too long. First of all, she has a lot of annoying ass moves. One of these said move is the shield. When she puts this up, your goal basically remains the same. Just attack her and eventually the shield will break. But for shit's sakes, this thing takes a long time to break. And sure, you can find some combos to deplete her stamina, but for me, as soon as her stamina reaches close to 0, my stamina ends up depleting, which then causes her stamina bar to refill rapidly. She also takes a small amount of damage when this thing is up. She was the first boss in the game to make me reset all my stats and put most of my points into stamina. Okay, so shitty shield aside, what else do I hate about the fight? Well, I also hate the summons. During the fight, she will summon a bunch of different enemies. One is the invisible ghost guys, some dogs, and worst of all, this big tanky ass dude. The reason why this summon is the worst is because she will levitate in the air, avoiding all damage while you're here fighting this thing, who mind you, is super tanky, and will sometimes spawn dogs or other enemies to help him out. This felt more annoying than fun. Okay, that's bad, but defeating this guy must mean she gets, temporarily stunned or something, right? Well, wrong. After you defeat him, the fight goes on as continued. Her health and stamina literally remains the same, and she can still pop out the bubble shield eventually. And given enough time, she'll also do more summons again. So you can see why I personally didn't enjoy this fight. I've said this a couple times throughout this video, but most of the issues I had with some of the bosses weren't with the combat or their damage, it was their actual health. Meaning these guys are damage sponges. They just eat up whatever you throw at them. But yeah, that aside, she's really hard. And at the number 1 spot for the hardest boss in the game, we have Ozma. Ozma was hyped up in the story, at least in the later parts. He was Khazan's friend, but due to his girlfriend or whatever being killed, he decided to unleash literal chaos upon the world on some edgelord shit. So yeah, he's the main final boss of the game. So how does he hold up? Well, he's hard as hell. Like, super hard. Now when it comes on to his placement on the list, I was kind of confused at first on where to put him. I think that mechanically he's up there as one of the hardest bosses in the game, obviously, and deserves to be in the top 2 for sure. But where though? Well, I decided to put him here. You see, despite him being insanely difficult, especially in his second phase, I didn't spend too much time on him. And I'm not saying this to brag because, bro, these bosses were kicking my ass a lot. But it's one of those orphan of cause situations where even though I didn't die to him a lot, okay, that's cap. Because I did spend around 37 minutes on Ozma, but to be fair, in this game those are baby numbers, especially for new players. But the point is, I always acknowledge Orphan as a super hard boss, even though I never struggled with him. And it's kind of the same here. Technically I did struggle, but you know what I mean. And it's kind of the same here where I can put my pride and ego aside and acknowledge that despite me not spending as much time on him as I thought, he was still a super challenging fight. Now all that bibble babble aside, let's talk about his fight and why it's so hard. Well, here's the thing, I'm on the fence on calling him overtuned because I don't think he is, but at the same time he does way too much to the point where the fight can be a bit exhausting, but at least it's not bad compared to Belarian. His first phase is pretty similar to Reese where he spams magic but also has a decent amount of melee attacks incorporated, so at least the fight taught me how to deal with this. And for the most part, while it's a challenging phase, I got used to his moveset rather quickly. The only thing that can make this part drag on a bit is the fact that his stamina regenerates fairly quickly and the visual clutter on the screen which makes it hard to distinguish his attacks. But if you keep applying pressure on him, then this phase will be over without you using more than 2 of your heals. However, the most challenging part of the encounter starts now. Ozma's second phase is definitely a headache, but not a bad kind if you know what I mean. You lose your armor, which definitely lowers your stats and defense, and he has a lot more moves up his arsenal. But the main thing that made this phase difficult for me was, well, I'm gonna let you take a guess. If he said health, then you're correct. Just like most other bosses on this list. Look, I'm not complaining, and they don't need a nerf or anything. But, again, some of the bosses in this game have a crazy amount of health. And this guy is no exception. Honestly, I don't know how I would have beaten him if I didn't have the spear. If you're wondering why I'm not talking about his attacks, it's mostly because in this phase, this dude just has way too many to count. Like, every one of his attacks can be super deadly. And for some reason, after refighting him multiple times, this dude kept pulling out new moves out of his ass. And these attacks are kinda hard to distinguish from one another. But hey, at least his stamina bar doesn't regenerate during this phase, so that's a plus, I guess. Also, it turns out this guy has a whole secret third phase that ties into the true ending of the game. Now, I haven't fought him with the third phase, but apparently I have to play the game again and do some other things correctly. So yeah, despite him having a crazy amount of combos and health, the devs slapped on a third phase with a different health bar, which is insane. So yeah, this dude is definitely the hardest boss in the game, by a long shot. So there you have it, all the main bosses from the game ranked from easiest to hardest. Now again, I really enjoyed this game, and I really loved the combat system, and even though I thought some of the bosses had a bit too much health, there were more hits than misses when it came onto their encounters. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and be sure to like and subscribe if you want more content like this. Anyways, I hope you guys have a good one.